Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. When he was on the brink of death, he looked at Yu Shangrong who was sitting cross-legged across from him. He asked, "Who are you?" "I'll remember the name of the person who kills me." Yu Shangrong opened his eyes slightly and glanced at Jiang Liang. He smiled faintly again. "My name is Yu Shangrong." Jiang Liang chuckled inwardly. If he wasn't injured? Now he knew that nothing would have changed even if he weren't injured. If he were not injured, and Yu Shangrong had access to his cultivation base, he would have died in a gruesome manner. At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through Jiang Liang's head. Whether it was regret, desperation, or a chance to escape, none of those mattered now. Before he breathed his last breath, he uttered his final word, "Good." His head lolled to the side, and he breathed no more. The night was still, and the moonlight was enticing. After an unknown period of time, the moonlight shone into the cave of reflection again. Yu Shangrong's long hair was now half white. Yu Shangrong opened his eyes slowly. He lowered his head and looked at the hair on his shoulders. He was not shocked by it. He closed his eyes again. There was a huge wave of energy outside the cave of reflection. Sometime later, a voice rang from outside the cave. The voice was sharp and clear. "Second senior brother." Yu Shangrong smiled faintly and said. Yu Shangrong was slightly taken aback. He went to his little senior sister's side and bowed as well. Zhou looked at Yu Shangrong's hair. He turned to little Yuan and said, "Yuan, I have something to speak about to your second senior brother. Give us some privacy." "Oh." Although little Yuan was slightly unwilling, she always did as she was told. She turned to look at Yu Shangrong before she waved her hands and said, "Second senior brother, let's spar in the future. I'll be going now." Yu Shangrong nodded. After little Yuan left, Zhou extended his hand and said tonelessly, "The longevity sword." Yu Shangrong knew that he could not resist. Yet, he hesitated slightly before he finally placed the longevity sword in his master's hand. When Zhou touched the longevity sword, he gauged the energy within it. It was practically empty. Zhou tossed the sword back to Yu Shangrong and said, "Don't you feel regretful? You could have lived for another 200 years. He was sure that Yu Shangrong had used the remaining power inside the sword to kill Jiang Liang. The longevity sword, like its name suggested, could prolong one's life and stave off death for a while. Yu Shangrong appeared calm as he said, "I have never regretted the strokes of my sword. In the past, the present, or future, I will never regret it." With his hands on his back, Zhou asked, "At this point, do you still think that I'm trying to kill you?" Yu Shangrong was stunned. Although they had not spoken much ever since they were in Radiant Cloud Forest, he could clearly sense his master's change. After mulling it over, he replied, "There's no guarantee of what might happen in the future." "The future? How much longer can you live? What future are you talking about?" Zhou retorted. Yu Shangrong was momentarily stumped. After some time, he said, "You said that you'll kick down the doors of the 9-leaf stage." Zhou looked up at the sky and the moon that was shining brightly. He sighed, shook his head, and said, "No matter what I did, that's all in the past." Yu Shangrong did not know what he was supposed to say. When he heard this, the animosity he felt in the past rose again, reminding him of what had happened in the past. In the end, he chose to keep quiet. At this moment, Zhou turned around slowly and looked at Yu Shangrong. "There must be a reason why I tried to kill you in the past. Regardless, you're still my disciple. Your hair has already turned white. Once you've thought things through, come to the Eastern Pavilion." He did not wait for Yu Shangrong's reply and turned to leave the cave of reflection as soon as he finished speaking. A long time, with the moonlight still shining on him, Yu Shangrong tightly gripped his longevity sword with his trembling finger before he entered the cave of reflection once again. "Ding!" instructed Yu Shangrong. "Reward, 500 merit points." Early the next morning, the sun rose from the east as usual. When the morning rays shone into the cave of reflection, little Yuan hopped toward the entrance. She called out, second senior brother. Morning, little junior sister. Yu Shangrong carried the longevity sword in his arms and walked out of the cave of reflection. At this moment, Yu Shangrong's hair was no longer partially white. They had turned completely white. Little Yuan's eyes widened in shock. She pointed at him and said, second senior brother, your hair. It's all right. Yu Shangrong looked up at the sun in the east and smiled in contentment. I'll look for master. No need. Yu Shangrong walked forward. Little Yuan stopped in her tracks. Yu Shangrong walked up to her and smiled. Little junior sister, I've completely lost my cultivation base. If you want to spar with me, you'll have to go easy on me. I will. Little Yuan found it difficult to speak. There was a small crowd at the Cave of Reflection now. Pan Zhong, Zhou Jifeng, Hua Yueshing, Zhao Yu, Ming Shirin, Zhu Honggong, and several female disciples gathered around and watched Yu Shangrong. They had heard about Yu Shangrong killing a nascent divinity tribulation realm expert even with his cultivation base sealed. They had also heard about his hair turning partially white. However, now that they had seen him, they saw that his hair was completely white. His hair had turned white overnight. They knew about Yu Shangrong's lineage and whispered among themselves. The Melilot grew in nobleman nation. It bloomed in the morning and wilted at night. Yu Shangrong glanced at the others. He greeted them in an elegant manner, morning. Everyone else cupped their hands. Good morning, Mr. Second. Little Yuan said, second senior brother, I'll go ask for master's help. He'll surely find a way. Didn't you come to spar with me? Yu Shangrong asked. Well, little Yuan gave it some thought before replying, all right. In the eastern pavilion of the evil sky pavilion. Zhou had meditated upon the heavenly writing scrolls for a whole night. He was now in high spirits. He stretched his limbs and he stood outside the eastern pavilion / At this moment, Li Yunzhao and Jiang Aijian walked over. The two of them bowed. Li Yunzhao said, on behalf of the Empress Dowager, I thank you, old mister. After your treatment, the Empress Dowager has been feeling better. We'll return today, and I'm here to bid you farewell. Jiang Aijian stood up, bowed, and said, I'll see them off. Zhou knew what was in Jiang Aijian's mind. He said, Li Yunzhao. When you return to the divine capital, tell them Jiang Aijian is dead. Moreover, tell the crown prince that the evil sky pavilion will remember this. Li Yunzi bowed immediately to kowtow, begging for forgiveness. However, Jiang Aijian said, save it. Don't you know the old senior's style? Go. Li Yunzhao was a person of the imperial family, after all. It was only natural for him to speak in favor of the imperial family. However, Jiang Aijian was also a member of the imperial family. Lu Huan and Lu Ji were his brothers, and yet, he did not care about them at all. Lu Zhou looked as Jiang Aijian pulled Li Yunzhao out of the eastern pavilion. He could not help but sigh. Oh, ever-living emperor, don't you have any decent descendants? When Li Yunzhao thought about it, that statement sounded wrong. The fourth prince, Lu Bing, was a general of the borders. He was a man with achievements. The fifth prince, Lu Hong, was timid, but he was not wicked. He almost forgot. Jiang Aijian or Lu Chen, the third prince, was not an evil person as well. Meanwhile, in one of the more secluded branches of the Nether Sect, Zhenghai was pacing back and forth. He looked at Wuya, who was sitting on a chair at the side, and asked, seventh junior brother, do you have a good plan? Wuya shook his head.